12 breathtakingly mysterious archaeological discoveries that shocked the world. Have you ever wondered if human history is really as we've been taught? Or perhaps, hidden beneath the layers of time, there are still mysteries waiting to be uncovered? Welcome to the Ancient History Channel, where we explore the mysterious, the incredible, and the archaeological discoveries that make even scientists pause in awe. Today, we're embarking on a journey unlike any adventure you've taken before. A journey through 12 breathtakingly mysterious archaeological discoveries, featuring artifacts and relics that even historians and archaeologists have yet to fully explain. From ancient cities buried beneath the earth, to artifacts depicting technologies ahead of their time, to remarkably preserved skeletons and mummies. Each discovery tells a story full of surprises. You'll also encounter strange stone statues whose construction remains a mystery, massive structures that modern imagination can barely replicate, and relics that mark civilizations that once existed and vanished as if they had never been there at all. But most importantly, today's journey isn't just about looking into the past. It's a challenge to how we understand humanity, history, and creativity that surpasses imagination. I want you to prepare your mind, open your eyes wide, and let curiosity lead the way, because every discovery will make you exclaim, "Unbelievable!" However, before we dive into these discoveries, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell if you also love exploring unsolved mysteries. Now let's begin this journey with our very first discovery. Noblewoman's mummy holds her husband's heart for 350 years. At the Jacobin convent in the city of Rennes in northwest France, archaeologists have uncovered a discovery that has left the scientific community astonished. The almost perfectly preserved body of a 17th century noblewoman lying in a lead coffin with her late husband's heart placed right beside her. Just hearing that makes you curious to know the story behind it, doesn't it? The body has been identified as Louise de Kengo, the wife of nobleman Toussaint Perrien, who passed away in 1656 at the age of over 60. But what has amazed experts is not just her age or noble status, it's the extraordinary preservation of her body. After more than 350 years underground, much of her hair, skin, internal organs, and even her brain remain intact. Standing at just 4 feet 9 inches tall, Louise's physical appearance has barely changed over time, a truly rare case in archaeology. But the pinnacle of curiosity lies in her husband's heart, placed right next to her in the coffin. At first, it may sound eerie, but archaeologists explain that this was not unusual. In the 17th century, locals often entrusted important organs of the deceased to family members or religious institutions for safekeeping, as a gesture of love and respect. So, Louise holding her husband's heart in the coffin was not only an act of affection, but also a ritual steeped in the religious beliefs of that era. Her body was also wrapped in a cloak, with a cross on her chest, and her clothing closely resembled that of a nun. Based on this, archaeologists hypothesize that after her husband's death, Louise may have chosen to enter the convent, seeking peace and spiritual devotion. And it was precisely this convent that preserved her nearly intact body for more than 3.5 centuries. The discoveries didn't stop there. Around the excavation site, scientists also found 4 other coffins and approximately 800 graves dating back to the 17th century. However, all of those bodies had completely decomposed, leaving only bones behind. Compared to them, Louise's miraculous preservation is truly a rare beacon, as noted by the French National Center for Scientific Research, CNRS. Her case not only sheds light on the burial customs of the upper class, but also offers a unique window into the lives and beliefs of the nobility at that time. Isn't it fascinating that a heart could be preserved beside a loved one for over 3 centuries? And if you lived in that era, would you want to keep a part of your beloved close to you, as Louise did? These details make history come alive, not just as dry words in a book, but as a story full of emotion, love, and faith, touching even our hearts today. The mystery of the Jacobin convent reminds us that history is not just the past, it is also the untold stories, the souls that continue to linger among us through time, preserved by the secrets that soil and stone hold. 2,000-year-old skeleton still preserves hair and ears. Here's what happened. In the city of Pompeii, once swallowed by the blazing hot ash of Mount Vesuvius, archaeologists unexpectedly uncovered a skeleton that still had silver-white hair and part of the ear preserved. even after more than 2,000 years. Spine-tingling just to imagine, right? But the story behind this skeleton is even more fascinating than a documentary and almost hard to believe. The man was Marcus Venerius Secundio, whose name was clearly engraved on his tombstone and also appears in the wax tablet archives of a wealthy Roman banker who lived in Pompeii. But here's the interesting part. Marcus wasn't born into privilege. He was originally a slave serving in the Temple of Venus. Yet life sometimes takes unexpected turns. Marcus was eventually freed and gradually climbed the social ladder through his own abilities. The clearest evidence of his rise is the large, luxurious tomb built for him. Anyone familiar with Pompeii's history knows that not everyone was buried. Most adults were cremated, and only children were typically interred. So Marcus's full-body burial was already unusual, but to have his hair and part of his ear still preserved? That's exceptionally rare. Adding to the intrigue, archaeologists read on his tombstone that after gaining freedom, Marcus's work in Pompeii involved organizing performances in Greek rather than Latin. At that time, using a foreign language was unusual, which demonstrates both the cultural openness of ancient Pompeii and Marcus's social standing. Rising from slavery to hold such influence, he must have been a prominent figure in the city's cultural life. Yet what truly captivates archaeologists is that Marcus's silver hair and part of his ear are still intact. How is this possible? According to the director of the Pompeii Archaeological Park, the tomb chamber was a sealed space, which helped preserve some of the soft tissues. Some experts even speculate that Marcus may have been mummified, a practice uncommon in Roman culture. However, this is still a hypothesis. To find a definitive answer, specialists are analyzing fragments of cloth found with the skeleton to determine whether deliberate preservation techniques were used. Hopefully, the mystery will be clarified soon. Every time Pompeii is mentioned, it's impossible not to recall the disaster that buried the city in 79 AD. Mount Vesuvius, only about 9 miles away, produced pyroclastic flows moving up to 435 miles per hour and temperatures reaching 1,832 degrees Fahrenheit, obliterating life in an instant. Roman poet Pliny the Younger described the massive black plume rising like a flaming pine tree and sweeping down, engulfing Pompeii in thick darkness. Around 2,000 people perished. When Pompeii was excavated in the 19th century, researchers uncovered just over 1,000 bodies, many preserved as plaster mummies, frozen in the very moment death struck. Amid this tragic scene, Marcus Venerius Secundio's skeleton stands out as a mystery that defies time. A man who rose from slavery, gained freedom, lived prosperously, and now lies under volcanic ash with his silver hair intact, as if he still wants to tell the story that has remained unheard for 2,000 years. So, what truly allowed him to be preserved so perfectly for millennia? And what other secrets of his life remain undiscovered? Share your thoughts. Perhaps your perspective could shed new light on this extraordinary story. 3,500-year-old axes buried deep in a Polish forest reveal a strange ancient ritual. In a dense forest in the Kociewie region of northern Poland, where you'd expect to find nothing but trees, dry leaves, and the sound of wind brushing through the canopy, a strange story began with a faint beep from a metal detector. And that very beep led metal-detecting specialist Dennis Konkol to a discovery that immediately caught the attention of archaeologists. 5 Bronze Age axes, buried about 8 to 12 inches below the ground, lying untouched for 3,500 years. Just imagine, an entire cache of ancient axes hidden in the middle of the forest. Strange, isn't it? But the story becomes even more fascinating once archaeologists began closely analyzing the axes. After examination, they revealed that these weren't ordinary axes at all. They were Tautušai axes, named after the village of Tautušai in Lithuania. These axes have slender necks and crescent-shaped blades. According to Piotr Klimaszewski, head of the Archaeological Monuments Office, this type of axe once served multiple purposes, chopping wood or being wielded as a weapon during ancient conflicts. But what intrigued researchers most wasn't how the axes were used in everyday life. Klimaszewski admitted that these axes may have been used in religious rituals or even as a form of ancient sacrifice. This possibility opens a window into a misty layer of ancient culture, where people believed that sharp, powerful tools like axes could serve as a bridge between humans and the gods who governed nature. According to Igor Strzok, conservator of the Pomeranian province, finding a set of axes like this in such a remote forest location is extremely rare. This only deepens the mystery and raises questions. Who brought them here? Why were they buried? Was this once a sacred site for rituals? Or was it a hidden stash of battle spoils buried to avoid detection? And the mystery thickens further. Not only were the axes found, but the archaeological team also uncovered a small yet fascinating object nearby. A 2,000-year-old bone pin, a type of clothing fastener used in ancient times. Its presence adds another layer of intrigue, as it belongs to a completely different era than the axes. Still, there is one thing all archaeologists agree on. The preservation of the axes is astonishing. After millennia underground in cold soil, their shapes and details remain so intact that both the discoverer and experts were stunned. For now, the reason this ancient axe hoard ended up in the forest remains a major question. Researchers say they need to continue excavating, analyzing the soil layers, comparing materials, and reconstructing the historical context to understand exactly why the axes were placed there. At this point, everything remains only a set of early hypotheses, and it's precisely this uncertainty that makes the discovery so irresistibly captivating for anyone who loves archaeology and ancient mysteries. An ancient cemetery of thousands of cliffside tombs, resembling a giant beehive. You may already know that on the map of Italy, Sicily is often seen as a land full of strange wonders and endless surprises. But what you may not know is that hidden among its many famous landmarks lies an ancient secret, quietly preserved among the mountains and forests, waiting for curious travelers to discover it. And then, as you lift your head, you suddenly find yourself staring at an enormous rock wall dotted with thousands of small openings, resting places of ancient people from thousands of years ago. Yes, this is the Pantalica rock necropolis, a place that stands like a massive stone beehive pressed against the mountainside, leaving anyone who sees it with chills from both its grandeur and its mystery. Mention Pantalica, and people will immediately recall one of the largest prehistoric burial complexes in the entire Mediterranean, with around 5,000 tombs carved deep into the limestone cliffs. From afar, the tomb openings glimmer in the sunlight like thousands of eyes watching over the valley below. As you walk closer, each tomb's unique shape becomes clearer. Some are square like stone boxes, others rectangular, and the smaller ones are oval, like egg-shaped cavities clinging to the rock face. Step into one of these tombs, and the inside opens up like a man-made cave. Some are even divided into multiple chambers, making it easy to imagine the hard labor ancient people endured while carving them with primitive tools. It is estimated that many of these tombs have existed for nearly 3,000 years, dating back to the Bronze Age, a time when humans were just learning how to tame nature. Back then, the coastal inhabitants of Sicily chose to carve tombs into the cliffs, both to protect the bodies of their loved ones and to keep them safe from wild animals and floods. But history didn't stop there. By the 7th century BC, when the Sicani people settled in the area, many of the older tombs were abandoned. Later, at the beginning of the Roman period, new layers of burials appeared, evidence that Pantalica continued to be used across generations. During the Middle Ages, Muslim settlers discovered this rugged mountain landscape and established a community here, using it as a perfect refuge amid untamed nature. The Hyblaean Valley, where Pantalica is located, was shaped by the Calcanara and Anapo rivers, creating a landscape where cliffs, water, and forest merge beautifully. Walking into this valley, you can feel nature shifting around you. Towering rock walls, dense green forests, and birds calling from above as if guiding you back through ancient time. What's remarkable is that the entire area remains completely wild, untouched by concrete, development, or modern infrastructure. This pristine condition helped Pantalica earn recognition as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2005. Today, the only way to reach Pantalica is on foot, but it's precisely this slow, deliberate journey that makes the experience unforgettable. Each winding path along the cliffs feels like a passageway through layers of history. Standing in the valley and looking up at the giant beehive of 1,000 tombs clinging to the rock wall is enough to give anyone goosebumps, mixed with deep admiration for the hands and minds of ancient people. Many visitors say that walking through the valley feels like traveling backward in time. And perhaps, as you stand before tombs that have rested silently for millennia, surrounded by nature that remains untouched since the beginning, you too may feel time itself gently stepping behind you. So if you ever find yourself in Sicily, let your feet lead you to Pantalica. Who knows, amid this giant stone beehive, you might experience a strange sensation, as if you're exploring the world while also listening to the echoes of history from deep within the cliffside. Isn't that extraordinary? The oldest animal fossil on Earth. If you're someone who loves stories from prehistoric times, someone who enjoys tracing the footsteps of creatures that lived even before the dinosaurs, then the discovery I'm about to share will definitely make you sit up straight in surprise. More than 550 million years ago, when Earth was still shrouded in the darkness of its earliest days, a group of strange organisms quietly stretched themselves beneath the ocean floor. And now, the tiny fossils they left behind have been discovered in a remote region of Canada, opening a window directly into the dawn of life. Specifically, at Mistaken Point Ecological Reserve, one of the most valuable fossil treasure troves on the planet, scientists from the University of Oxford, Cambridge, and Memorial University have uncovered over 100 microscopic fossils of a species known as rangeomorphs. The name may sound unusual, but their appearance is even more distinctive. They look like the fronds of a fern or like modern-day sea pens. What's fascinating is that these fossils are incredibly small. Many specimens are only a few millimeters long, so tiny that you need to examine them closely just to see them. But don't let their size fool you. When fully grown, rangeomorphs could reach up to about 6.5 feet in length, far larger than most people would expect. These organisms lived during the Ediacaran period, from 542 to 635 million years ago, an era considered the dawn of the animal kingdom. In other words, rangeomorphs were among the first complex multicellular organisms on Earth, marking the earliest steps in the history of animal life. According to Dr. Martin Brazier, a member of the research team, these may be the oldest animal fossils ever discovered. To picture how they were preserved, imagine this: soft-bodied creatures living peacefully on the ocean floor hundreds of millions of years ago, suddenly buried by volcanic ash erupting from a nearby island. That scorching ash captured their shapes like a snapshot, preserving the final moment of an ancient world. This discovery not only reinforces earlier theories about the appearance of the first animals, but also helps scientists better understand the dramatic transformation of life during Earth's earliest stages. When we place these fossil fragments into the grand puzzle of evolution, we begin to see how long and extraordinary the journey of life truly is. From tiny fern-like organisms in the deep sea to the vast variety of enormous species that came later. These rangeomorph fossils don't just hold historical significance, they open up entirely new avenues of research into how life formed and developed under harsh primordial conditions. They remind us that before there were forests, before fish swam freely, and long before dinosaurs ruled the earth, there were already organisms quietly weaving the very first threads of life. And if you love exploring ancient mysteries like I do, you can't help but feel a shiver when you realize that what you're looking at is the trace of a creature that lived 500 million years ago. Just an instant in the universe's timeline, yet an entire chapter humanity is still trying to understand. A pair of gold-covered mummies, resting together for 2,000 years in an ancient Egyptian temple. It may sound strange, but yes, even mummies can come in couples. Recently, archaeologists uncovered an incredibly rare discovery in the ancient city of Taposiris Magna, located right in Egypt's Nile Delta. Two mummies, a man and a woman, who had been resting side by side for 2,000 years. At first glance, you'll immediately be struck by the luxuriousness of their burial. Both mummies were carefully embalmed and covered in gold leaf, a treatment reserved only for the most powerful or wealthy individuals of their time. But the story doesn't end there. Archaeologists revealed that the tomb structure where the pair was laid to rest was not completely sealed. Over centuries, water seeped in, causing the bodies to deteriorate. Even so, the remaining details are enough to tell a story of wealth and influence, especially the richly furnished burial goods, including around 200 coins bearing the image of Cleopatra, clearly marking the era in which they lived. On one of the mummies, some of the gold leaf still bears the image of a scarab beetle, an ancient Egyptian symbol of rebirth and divine power. From these clues, experts believe that the couple were likely high-ranking priests, religious figures regarded by ancient Egyptians as intermediaries between the human world and the realm of the gods. They lived during a time of grandeur, carrying with them secrets that even time couldn't fully erase, and the fact that they were buried next to each other suggests that love and power didn't end with a single lifetime. They could stretch across millennia. This mummy couple story naturally makes us wonder, can love truly transcend death? Personally, if I'm being honest, maybe yes, maybe no. Life is unpredictable. Just look at that viral story from China a few years ago. A young couple in love wanted to be together but faced family opposition. So they decided to jump off a bridge together. The girl jumped first, and the guy picked up his sandals and went home. So yes, love in theory is beautiful, but in reality, it can get messy. Still, the discovery at Taposiris Magna shows that love and power can be preserved through time. Even when bodies decay, the meaning of their bond remains, etched into the gold leaf, the coins, and the ancient architecture. Everything left behind tells a story of power, faith, and love, three things that seem different, yet somehow walk together across thousands of years. This discovery not only highlights the Egyptians' remarkable embalming techniques, but also opens a doorway to deeper understanding of ancient Egyptian culture, religion, and society. Seeing this mummy pair lying together after 2,000 years reminds us that love isn't just a fleeting emotion. It can also become an immortal mark in history, inspiring admiration and reflection across the world. So if you're currently in love or searching for your other half, this story may leave you feeling both dreamy and cautious. Because while love can survive the ages, real life still requires a bit of wisdom. Unless you want to walk away with your sandals, like that guy in China. In the end, loving wisely might just be another way to leave a lasting mark in this challenging world, don't you think? The 2-million-year-old skull box of humanity's ancestors. If you're someone who loves exploring human origins and wants to look directly at the earliest traces of our ancestors, then the story of Australopithecus sediba will make you hold your breath from the very first moment. This species was discovered in a remote cave in South Africa and has been described by scientists as a missing link, a bridge between ancient apes and modern humans. Just hearing that is enough to excite anyone passionate about archaeology, because this is one of the most important clues in understanding how humans evolved over millions of years. What makes this discovery truly remarkable is that studies of the brain, pelvis, hands, and feet of Australopithecus sediba show that they possessed both primitive ape-like features and traits resembling modern humans. This blend of characteristics has led scientists to suspect that Australopithecus sediba may have been a direct ancestor of the genus Homo. In other words, our earliest relatives, the first beings to walk on two legs and eventually build human civilization. Of course, the discovery story itself is just as dramatic. Part of the skeleton of a boy between 10 and 13 years old, weighing about 60 pounds, was found by the 9-year-old son of a scientist during excavations at Malapa. The image of the boy's remains, showing a striking mix between ape and modern human, quickly made headlines across the scientific world. Not long after, archaeologists uncovered the skeleton of a woman around 30 years old, weighing roughly 73 pounds. Both skeletons were confirmed to be members of the newly identified species Australopithecus sediba, but the cave where these fossils were found held an even deeper mystery. It contained fossils of at least 25 different animal species, including saber-toothed cats, wild cats, brown hyenas, wild dogs, antelopes, and horses. Because of this, scientists believe the site was once a deadly natural trap, where animals and even our ancient ancestors may have fallen in while searching for water. Just imagining that scene is chilling. A remote place where predators and prey alike became sealed together in the same space millions of years ago. Looking at the body structure of Australopithecus sediba, you might be surprised to learn that they walked on two legs like we do, with hips similar to modern humans, yet they still retained primitive features such as long arms and a smaller brain. This mix of traits made them both human-like and distinctly ape-like, a nearly perfect intermediate form in the evolutionary chain. According to Professor Lee Berger of the University of the Witwatersrand, the project's lead researcher, the advanced features found in the brain and body make Australopithecus sediba the strongest candidate for our direct ancestor, possibly an even better fit than Homo habilis, the earliest known species of the human genus. In other words, if you've ever wondered, what did the very first of us look like, Australopithecus sediba is the most vivid answer science can currently offer. That's why this discovery is not just a milestone in archaeology, it opens the door for us to understand our origins more deeply, how our ancestors walked, how they lived, and how their brains began developing from primitive forms. Standing before these 2 million-year-old fossils, we're not just looking at physical evolution, we're witnessing the long, extraordinary journey that led from ancient beings in the wild to us today, curious, intelligent, and endlessly driven to explore. A 1,000-year-old castle beneath a basketball court in England. Have you ever imagined that right beneath an old basketball court in the middle of a city, there could be a 1,000-year-old castle hidden away? If not, then let me take you to Gloucester, England. Because here, an archaeological excavation has brought us an incredibly surprising discovery: the long-lost traces of Gloucester Castle, once home to English royalty during the Middle Ages, which had been forgotten for centuries and only recently revealed. The story begins in the early medieval period, when the Normans conquered England in the 11th century. At that time, Gloucester Castle was built as a fortified stronghold, meant to protect power and extend the influence of the regional rulers. Over time, the castle continued to be renovated and expanded, and by the 13th century, it had become an important residence for members of the royal family. You can imagine that in those days, the castle was not only a symbol of authority, but also the center of political and social life in the city. But like many ancient castles, Gloucester eventually fell into decline. From the 15th to the 17th century, most of its stone structures were stripped away to build roads, houses, and other projects in the city center. Only a small portion of the above-ground structures remained, and these were used as the local prison. By 1787, the castle was completely demolished, and the area was converted into farmland. Over time, the castle faded from historical records, as if it had never existed. However, a recent excavation has uncovered findings that have thrilled archaeologists. Beneath layers of earth long forgotten, researchers found trenches and remnants of medieval structures. They believe that some of these remains were once brick-built bridges or raised causeways that crossed defensive moats, critical features for protecting the castle. In addition, a section of a post-medieval wall was identified, likely connected to the gardens that existed on the ruins during the 19th century. What's interesting is that these remains are still located at a relatively shallow depth, allowing archaeologists to observe and study them easily without extensive digging. Thanks to this, we can now see fragments of ancient royal architecture and gain a clearer understanding of how people used the land, reshaped the landscape, and transformed the city over the centuries. A simple basketball court suddenly became a time portal, opening a window into a forgotten chapter of the Middle Ages. This discovery not only excites archaeologists, but also reminds us that history isn't always confined to books or museums. It sometimes lies right beneath our feet. Gloucester is a perfect example. Even modern places like basketball courts or construction sites can hide 1,000-year-old mysteries, waiting for curious eyes to uncover and bring them back to life. I'm sure that if you stood on that basketball court, knowing that beneath the concrete and asphalt were ancient walls, water-filled moats, and brick bridges, you'd feel as though you were stepping into a journey through time, where the past and present meet in the most magical way. And that is exactly the irresistible charm of archaeology. Always surprising, always revealing, and always reminding us to appreciate the layers of history that centuries have left behind. A 2,800-year-old tomb of an Amazon warrior woman in Armenia. We often assume that in the distant ancient past, men were the only fierce warriors, while women were delicate, staying at home to handle small domestic tasks. But reality has proven the opposite. Not only men, but women too could charge into battle, shoot arrows, ride horses, and fight like true heroes. To see the proof, let's travel back more than 2,500 years to an ancient burial ground in Lori Province, Armenia, where archaeologists recently uncovered something that stunned the research community: the remains of a warrior woman buried with numerous valuable artifacts. The burial site, known as Bover contains many graves from the pre-Armenian period, dating roughly from the 8th to 6th centuries BCE. At first, when the research team examined the tomb, they assumed the remains belonged to a woman of high social status. But after analyzing the skeletal structure carefully, they discovered a shocking truth. Her bones were strong and robust, with signs of trauma in multiple areas, something extremely rare for ordinary women of that era. Specialists also found clear evidence that the muscles in her upper body were highly developed, strong enough to pull and release a bow using shoulder power, a defining trait of trained archers. Meanwhile, the structure of her thigh and gluteal muscles revealed that she was very skilled at horseback riding, an essential military skill in ancient warfare. If you imagine her pulling a bowstring across her chest while riding at full speed, you'll instantly see the image of a proud, fierce warrior woman, almost like someone straight out of legend. Even more fascinating is that this area didn't contain only one female warrior. Many other graves, both male and female, showed similar skeletal features, proving that women truly participated in combat rather than staying home as we often assume. At the nearby Karasham site, researchers even discovered 5 male warrior graves with striking similarities, suggesting that infantry and archers during that period may have included both men and women. One detail that sends chills down the spine is the battle injuries found on her body. Deep inside her left knee bone, archaeologists found an iron arrowhead, along with 3 additional wounds elsewhere. These injuries were very likely sustained during combat, suggesting she had faced several enemies at once. Imagine a young woman standing amid a chaotic battlefield, wounded yet still fighting to the end. How could anyone not admire such bravery? Researchers, including specialist Koudaverdian, believe that women like her may have inspired the Amazon warrior legends of Greek mythology, the same Amazons who were said to battle heroes like Hercules and Achilles. This opens up an entirely new perspective on history, that the legendary Amazons may not have been pure myth, but real warriors who once walked the earth, carried real bows, and fought real battles. Looking at her remains, we don't just see a woman from the past, we feel her resilience, strength, and courage echoing across time. And I'm certain that if you stood at the Bover Eye burial site yourself, you would sense a powerful energy from the past, reminding you that some legends begin with real people. A 7,000-year-old mummy in northern Chile reveals secrets of the Chinchorro culture. On May 24th, a group of students on a field trip to the Morro de Arica archaeological site in northern Chile accidentally discovered a 7,000-year-old mummy emerging from the ground. Sounds chilling already, doesn't it? But the reason the body surfaced was completely natural. Just a few weeks earlier, an 8.2 magnitude earthquake had shaken the area, shifting the soil and bringing the ancient remains to the surface, as if history itself wanted to introduce its story to us. As soon as the discovery was made, experts stepped in to investigate. They confirmed that the mummy belonged to the Chinchorro culture, one of the oldest known cultures in Chile. And this was not the first time the Chinchorro people astonished archaeologists. Since the 1920s, Chinchorro sites have been uncovered along the Arica coastline, where they lived by hunting, fishing, and gathering seaweed. But what amazed researchers the most was their unique mummification tradition, completely different from the practices of the famous ancient Egyptians. While the Egyptians only mummified members of the elite, the Chinchorro mummified everyone in their community, adults, children, and even fetuses. To them, it was an act of honoring the dead, a way to preserve the memory and spiritual presence of their ancestors within the community. Imagine it. Thousands of years ago, these people already believed deeply in the spiritual value of preserving the body, without distinctions of wealth or status. How can we not take our hats off to that? Before this most recent finding, archaeologists had already unearthed many Chinchorro mummies, including the 4 oldest pre-Columbian mummies in the world, dating back to around 5000 BCE. But the discovery made by the students only further highlights the Chinchorro culture's significance in human history, proving that this is not just the story of a small culture in Chile, but an important chapter in humanity's understanding of honoring the dead and the tradition of mummification. At present, archaeologists are continuing their excavations in the area. They emphasize that northern Chile must be recognized as a protected cultural heritage zone in order to preserve these priceless historical treasures from the destructive forces of time and nature. Just imagine, amid the dry desert and sudden earthquakes, secrets thousands of years old still lie waiting to be uncovered, ready to share their stories with today's world. With every mummy discovered, we don't just see a body dried by time, we see a culture, a community, a way of life, and an ancient belief system. It makes us wonder, if we ourselves lived in the time of the Chinchorro, Would we uphold such traditions and beliefs? And if one day, modern humans were excavated by future archaeologists, what would they understand about us? The appearance of the 7,000-year-old mummy at Morro de Arica is a vivid reminder that history is always waiting to be discovered. And sometimes, all it takes is an earthquake or a curious step to bring us face to face with the past. A 2,000-year-old treasure of gold and gemstones beneath Italy's hot springs reveals the mystery of a giant serpent god. If you think treasure hunting stories only exist in movies, then come with me to the town of San Casciano dei Bagni in Italy, where, at the end of 2024, archaeologists uncovered an entire hidden world buried for more than 2,000 years beneath the misty, steaming ancient hot springs. There, they found a massive collection of treasures so astonishing that it shook the international archaeological community. Bronze statues, gold coins, gemstone jewelry, and even perfectly preserved eggs dating back to the Roman and Etruscan eras. Hearing that, you're probably wondering, why would so many valuables be buried underground in this place? In fact, San Casciano was once a sacred center of worship and healing. Centuries ago, both the Etruscans and the Romans considered the area holy, believing the natural hot springs possessed healing powers. They would throw offerings into the waters, gold, jewelry, and spiritually significant objects as prayers for protection and good health. And now, those offerings are being brought back to light after thousands of years resting beneath the springs. This excavation is especially remarkable because the finds were buried nearly 16 feet underground in a hilltop town located about 100 miles north of Rome. The excavation began in 2019, but the deeper the archaeologists dug, the more extraordinary the discoveries became. In the latest phase, they uncovered thousands of coins, crowns, gold rings, gemstones, and countless bronze statues of both men and women. Each artifact carries a story about the spiritual life of ancient communities, a world where faith and healing were deeply intertwined with the sacred hot springs. But the most stunning discovery of all was a bronze serpent statue nearly 3 feet long, an artifact that left the entire archaeological team speechless. Experts believe the statue may represent Agathos Daimon, the serpent deity of Greek mythology, revered as a guardian of hot springs and a bringer of good fortune and prosperity. Even more astonishing, this statue is the largest representation of the serpent god ever found, far bigger than the smaller examples displayed in the British Museum or the National Archaeological Museum in Naples. Just imagine it, discovering an enormous statue of a divine serpent right at the crossroads between two great ancient cultures, the Etruscans and the Romans, is like uncovering a missing piece of ancient religious history. Judging by the sheer quantity and variety of the artifacts, it's clear that San Casciano was not just a healing site, it was one of the region's major spiritual centers. The treasures cast into the waters were not mere offerings for health, but symbols of devotion, hope, and reverence for the gods. Today, as each artifact resurfaces after millennia underground, San Casciano is quickly becoming a new global hotspot for archaeology. These discoveries not only reconstruct the spiritual life of ancient civilizations, but also open countless new research pathways for scholars in the future. What do you think? A treasure buried for more than 2,000 years and still perfectly preserved? Could this be proof of a once glorious civilization that thrived here? Let me know your thoughts by leaving a comment below this video. A 13,000-year-old giant skeleton found right on a family farm. One seemingly ordinary day in Seymour, Indiana, the Skepman family experienced a full-on shock while digging a drainage trench on their property. At first, they assumed they had hit yet another pile of cow bones, just like many times before. But as they dug deeper, something extraordinary began to reveal itself. What appeared before them was a massive femur measuring over 4 feet long, dating back 13,000 years, far too large to belong to any farm animal. Alongside it was a huge tusk, resembling an elephant's but far larger. At that moment, everyone knew they were dealing with something far from ordinary. They immediately contacted archaeologists, who quickly arrived at the scene. As the excavation expanded, more and more bones surfaced. A jawbone filled with large teeth, upper leg bones, vertebrae, joints, and even part of a skull. The tusk, though broken into 2 pieces, was confirmed by experts to represent only 1/3 of its original length. meaning this creature once carried tusks long enough to make you look up in awe. After assembling and analyzing the bones, scientists identified the remains as belonging to a mastodon, an ancient member of the Mammalidae family, closely related to modern elephants but distinct from mammoths. Mastodons roamed the Earth from about 4 million years ago until their extinction several thousand years ago. Unlike the towering woolly mammoths, mastodons were stockier, with uniquely shaped teeth designed for crushing branches and a far more muscular build. The mastodon discovered on the Shepman farm is estimated to have weighed around 6 tons and to have died at 40 to 50 years old, essentially a strong, fully mature individual of the Ice Age. At 13,000 years old, the remains date back to the end of the last Ice Age, a period when early humans and giant prehistoric animals frequently crossed paths in the wild. But what makes this story even more meaningful is the family's decision afterward. Even though the discovery sat on private land and legally belonged to them, Joe Shepman and his son Brad chose not to keep it for themselves. Instead, they donated the entire mastodon skeleton to the Indiana State Museum. Their reason was simple, yet deeply heartfelt. It's wonderful to think that a child visiting the museum in Indianapolis can look at these bones and this tusk and know they were found right here at home. You might be wondering, what's the significance of finding a mastodon skeleton? Well, this is far more than an exciting archaeological discovery. It serves as a bridge between the past and the present, between humans and nature. It helps us understand how life existed in prehistoric times, how colossal creatures survived and adapted to the harsh climate of the Ice Age. As you can see, each discovery among these 12 archaeological mysteries is like an incomplete piece of the vast puzzle of human history. They challenge everything we think we know, forcing scientists to question hypotheses once considered certain, while also opening new doors for us to explore the origins, culture, and intelligence of our ancestors. Some of these mysteries we can explain, but others remain unresolved, sparking the imagination to soar. And it's precisely these mysteries that give archaeology its irresistible appeal, where every brick, every bone fragment, and every artifact has the potential to change the way we understand history and even ourselves. Just one encounter with these discoveries is enough to make you realize that human history is never static. Every passing day brings new secrets waiting to be uncovered, leaving us both amazed and hungry for more knowledge, right? So, which discovery impressed you the most among these? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any future discoveries. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.